It feels like I never left. It feels like I never left. And now I've got Patrick Johnston sitting next to me. You got a heavy dose of Irfan Gaffar last week, folks. And I'm back.
Is it possible to have a heavy dose of Irf? I mean, the guy's 6'5", but very lean.
I didn't realize how tall Irf was.
So tall.
It was so funny because we had this joke that I usually even say we had a joke. Someone in the YouTube chat was like, wow, Harman's looking bigger when Irf was sitting in the chair for Harman. But it was Harman and Irf last week. It's me this week. Harman Dayal is on the road. He will be joining me on Tuesday and Thursday. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you are getting Post Media's Patrick Johnston.
Quads, I really want to discuss Coop's couch.
Yes.
For people who don't know, is here for our late friend Coop. It goes to Sakaris and Price Days. And I really think Canucks Convo should be taken on the road. We should be sitting on this comfortable couch, sitting back, chatting away.
And when you said it,
I know Grady agrees.
And when you said it, I immediately was like, you are correct.
It's a conversation.
Absolutely. Like, I like our set. I like our set. I like
set.
Yeah, it's great. But like Harman and I sitting back, I'm a sit back kind of guy. Yeah. Like I'm a vibes guy on this show. I just, sit back, lean, talk.
Yeah.
That's what I like to do.
He's the eye test, Harm's the
That's right.
numbers guy.
I'm the vibes guy.
Nightmare.
You know where there's good vibes? In the Toyota BZ4X. The 2023 BZ4X is Toyota's brand new all-electric SUV that's designed to go the distance for you and your family. The BZ4X is packed with Toyota's coolest tech, but it still has that trusty SUV feel you know and love. And even though it's electric, it's capable of effortlessly conquering any terrain. Whether it's rain, snow, mud, or your friend's questionable post-game recaps, the BZ4X will get you through. And of course, we are coming to you from the iconic Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. Looking for your next meeting space? Contact the Wall Center for all your event needs at sales@wallcenter.com. It's like I said, it's like I never left.
Beautiful. What a read.
I could have crushed the ad read when I came in from vacation on Friday.
Hero.
That was the best. Yeah. Okay. Nick P in the chat. We did run a little late today, folks. Apologies for that. He said Quad's running late after C Block Science 10 went past the bell.
I really want to know if Nick P is related to Tampa Bay Lightning great Rudy Poshak. That's all I want to know. Nick, tell us. Are you related? Are you related to Rudy Poshak? That's what I want to know.
So I call him Nick P because I don't even dare try to pronounce.
Well, that's how they used to. At least 1990s hockey pronounced it Poshak. It might be wrong, but maybe Nick will notice and give us a comment there.
Karan, Harm would need his laptop. No. Trust me. I've said his name wrong many times. He's corrected me. I have it right.
Do you know what Irf called him last week?
What?
Oh, what did he call him?
Karen.
I called him Karen at one point. Karan.
All right.
He corrected me.
Sorry, Karan.
Yeah. He said Harm would need his laptop and a whiteboard while on the couch. Nick P said Rudy is my uncle.
There you go.
Nailed it. There you go. That is hilarious.
Nailed it.
What a fire start to this week. Canucks Conversation. It's going to be a busy episode today, folks. We've got a lot to get to. Elias Pettersson signed. We had the emergency episode out on Saturday. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen to that episode. But our thoughts on the signing. Obviously, I gave mine already on Saturday, but your thoughts on this contract that Elias Pettersson signed.
What were your thoughts? The good deal?
It's a great deal.
I'm amazed they got it under 12.
Okay. I'm amazed they got it under 12, but also that they got it for 8 years. Like, maybe not.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Maybe not amazed.
8 plus 12. Yeah.
I don't know if amazed is the right word for the term, but the dollar figure.
It's, in the end, is a deal about a player that wanted to be here. And no matter how you want to take the narrative, whatever the spin is, whether it was they planned this all along as, was sort of the take that was given to me, or they got to this week and were like, who? I mean, I think they always knew this week was going to be a pressure point. Or like last week, I should say. But the fact that, it was 8 years, under 12. In the end, the player, PD likes being here. Like, I always thought he liked being here. You're always kind of like, oh, there's a lot here. The noise, obviously, it's a big city. And that's why I asked him on Saturday, like, in the end, tell us about Vancouver. Like, you've talked about this being a place you want to be. And he's like, it reminds me of Sweden.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, there we go.
And I mean, another thing that I found really interesting about his press conference was him talking about the investment into the team, right? And there was a lot that PD needed to see, it felt like, and that comes from up top. Like he referenced the investment into, the arena upgrades, right? Like that stuff matters for players. And that's the thing is, ownership across other sports, especially sports where there's no salary cap, it's a little bit different. When it's the NHL, look, everybody's going to field a team, unless you're the Arizona Coyotes, obviously there's different stuff. But like for the most part, everybody's going to field a team. Some owners are going to do buyouts. Some owners are going to upgrade their facilities, and some owners are going to take care of their players beyond that. Obviously, we know with the Gillis era how much that was prevalent,
Right.
but it feels like that aspect of everything that, where the players are kind of put first.
Right.
It feels like that aspect maybe slipped up a little bit during the Benning regime,
100%.
where obviously is where PD came in.
And you mentioned the Gillis era. I mean, one of the things that they were very upfront about right off the bat was, for instance, Lawrence Gilman coming from the Arizona Coyotes and his experience running their AHL team in San Antonio. I mean, this is like 16-year-old information, but he saw up front how focused the Spurs were on keeping Tim Duncan happy, because like San Antonio was not a place to be.
Yeah,
but they did everything they could to like make it a cool place to play, and they recognized this was the thing they wanted Vancouver to be, and that's why you go back on the timeline for a practice rink. It's from that era, right? Like, it's not necessarily Gillis that led the charge on that, but he certainly was like, we need to do something like that.
Yeah. And
the discussions have been going, and obviously the Aquilinis, once they took over the team, they started looking around, where can we go? And it's been a talking point since at least 2010, when they stopped going to 8 rinks. So you're exactly like picking up on him talking about the renovations. What are we doing around here? What does this facility feel like? What do I feel like in terms of beyond just the game? Because all that stuff does matter in a league where everyone else is doing it. In the end, at some point, you're going to become an outlier, and the Canucks become an outlier. They're one of 2 teams that don't have a practice rink, and there's soon going to be they're going to be one team that doesn't have a practice rink. So all those things matter, and it was a statement. It wasn't just winning; like, he wanted to see culture, and he talked about culture. PD talked about culture on Saturday, and just the way the standard's been set. Whether it's the way Alvin interacts with the players, the way sort of the expectation that Rutherford has from his staff. The way Talkett works with the players.
There's alignment in the organization from top to bottom. And that's something there hasn't been that alignment for years, it feels like. So interesting to hear Elias Pettersson reference that in his press conference. There's an article right now that just went live on Canucks Army comparing the contract that Elias Pettersson signed with the one that William Nylander signed.
Right.
That one, that's where most of my conversation was on Saturday with Irv was Pettersson's younger. That contract is going to expire when he is 33 years old.
Right.
And Nylander is going to expire when he's 36. Pettersson plays a more premium position. He's better defensively. He's in the Selke conversation and all that sort of stuff. Although he shouldn't be this year, but that's a take I've given out on other shows.
Plays penalty kill from time to time.
There you go. When you look at it through that lens, this is a contract that looks good now and is only going to look better as the years go on and the cap, you assume, goes up.
Yeah. And I mean, Pettersson's this was the point that Pat Brisson made to me when I talked to him on Saturday, was that, listen, we could have gone 5 years, and a 5-year deal takes him to him 30. But he's like, the difference from those 3 years in our current contract is $38 million. And are you going to make a difference? Like, it would have been a $55 million deal. And he basically is like, $55 million deal versus almost 93, $38 million. Are you really going to make up that difference if you sign a 5-year deal now for less and then try to chase a deal when you're 30, which would have been like, you look at JT Miller, and he has guaranteed himself a lot of money in that exact window. Pettersson probably would have found that, but this is bird in the hand, and you're here and you know where you are. You got full control over your life, no
full
move.
No move.
So I think the price in the end, it was your comparison point is exactly right. Like, Nylander's a fantastic player, and you'd love to have him at that price point. Pettersson is only 25.
Also, when we bring up ownership and where you get the commitment from ownership, obviously we've mentioned the buyout as well, Oliver Ekman-Larsson and all that sort of stuff. But with Pettersson, it's a player-friendly contract in all the ways that the team could influence, with all those signing bonuses, obviously very front-loaded as well. It's as player-friendly as the team could make it, while still keeping it team-friendly for them when it comes to the salary cap and everything there.
And exactly. And people need to understand this. I don't know if you guys talked about this, but like the fact that it's got the 2 huge bonuses right at the beginning, which is very much about year 3, which 2026 is when the CBA ends. I would not be shocked if there's a lockout, like as cynical as that is, but like, there are huge financial incentive reasons for teams not to be paying their players for a couple months. And that's, in the end, that's an acknowledgement. He has a full-on salary that season, and that's the player saying, yep, I might not see some of that money.
Yeah.
And I'm accepting that. You're absolutely right. Like, the there are wins on both sides. The win for the team is that they get a little more cap room to work with. The win for the player is he gets a huge ton amount of money, no move, huge signing bonuses up front. It's a fun, interesting contract that's negotiated by two people who knew, essentially two parties that know contracts very well in Brisson and Barry, and Emily Costingay on the Canucks' side as well. Like, she gets some credit for that because she's the contract person.
Yep. I couldn't make it out on Saturday for the press conference.
We really missed you.
Yeah, I Petey missed me because nobody's laughing at his jokes.
I did.
You laughed at one of his jokes, but you asked the question.
He's the new assistant general manager.
Yeah, that was great. And Petey, like, I know where he's coming from.
We were laughing. We don't hold the mics up when we're laughing.
It wasn't loud enough.
Oh, come on. Quads.
People weren't laughing nearly enough. And I get it.
People need to understand. Quads, you weren't there.
I wasn't
You were laughing.
I wasn't there. And I know you're laughing, but you're not laughing nearly enough, it felt like. And I get where he's coming from, because look, like, Petey signed his contract, and you know what he thought of is, what jokes am I going to tell? I come to this show 5 days a week, mostly, and I think about what
an
jokes,
entire week.
That's what I'm saying. So there's 1 week where I couldn't make it, but I come to this show and I'm thinking, what jokes am I going to tell? And sometimes I'll tell a joke, and if I'm telling it while Harman's trying to think, right over his head. Boy genius misses a lot of my jokes.
Should I post the photo I caught of him once last year at the beginning of the season? Like, I turned to say something. It was pregame in Philly, and I turned to say something, and like, to his full credit, he was taking a moment to collect himself, and he literally, like, the photo I turned, and he was just like,
he does that all the time.
It's great.
He's look, not to pump his tires too much, but he's like a smart dude. Like, that's the best part of this show.
He's smarter than you and me combined.
Oh yeah, like, people throw in random names in the chat. I'm like, oh, I haven't heard of that guy, and I'm like, Harman, this guy. He's like, all right, so I've only watched 30 hours of him. It's like it's great. Harman does his homework, and he's not a vibes guy, which I'm working on, but that's what makes us a good team. Is I take on the vibes, and he takes on the, okay, I've watched this player, I have a very solid take about this. And
he's a vibes guy when it's not hockey.
Yeah.
He's out and about. Like, when he's out on a Friday night, he's a vibes guy.
Oh, it is Karun. Karan, why haven't you corrected me? You corrected me when I said Karen. Anyways, all right. Okay. Yeah, see, Jeremy Lee. Petey was sad at the press conference, not seeing Quads in the crowd, laughing at his jokes.
Yeah, don't butter Quads up.
He
was sad that you couldn't ask him about a stick.
Yeah, I mean,
that is your right.
Show up to the press conference. Petey is
couple Zoomers talking about life.
That's right. Talking about Call of Duty. FIFA.
100%.
But just on that note, like, that was one of my main takeaways from that presser, was his dry humor and how just the weight off his shoulder and how light he was making everything and joking around with J-Pad. Like, you could tell, like, this was definitely weighing on him, and he admitted that too, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And look, like, PJ, you've been in the room since Petey started his career here.
Mm-hmm.
He's been guarded the past few seasons compared to the start of his career.
Yeah, he's managing a lot. Yeah, I get it.
I'm curious when he get back home.
Initially he was like, "Who? What are these people about?" Yeah. He, you always hear that saying, "I don't want to make headlines." Fair enough. We're also not trying to make you look bad.
We have some breaking news here, fellas.
Uh-oh.
The New Jersey Devils have fired Lindy Ruff. That means Travis Green is the interim head coach.
Oh, hell yeah. Travis Green, baby. Interim head coach for the rest of the season.
Well, why wouldn't you do the rest of the season, Quads?
That just rocks. That's the best.
Is Durant's going to move there?
Imagine if the Devils go on a heater and Greener gets him in the first round.
Oh man, he knows what it takes to win playoff games. Man, the Devils had the most disappointing road trip of the season. I don't want to talk about the Devils too much on this show, but man, like, that has to be the most disappointing road trip of any team's season.
They got Lucas Dostal on Friday.
And Dostal's good, but like, man,
it's 2:20. I guess. I wonder. Is Canucks practice done in Anaheim? Does anybody know? I know they were practicing at 1.
I don't know. We should. Why?
You could ask Rick about it. Buddy Greener.
Oh, that's right.
He cites all the time.
Tell Harman. We gotta text Harman.
To tie that back to the Canucks, of course, one of the names that's been floated out there is Tyler Toffoli.
Oh my God.
According to Elliot today, the Devils are still trying to make the playoffs, even though, it seems like that's probably sailed at this point, and that they're potentially looking to re-sign Toffoli. So does he actually make it to the
I don't know.
trade
I was
market?
listening to the DFO Rundown podcast this morning on my way into work.
And you get Frank Smith back up here because I was looking at it.
And Frank brought up a good point. He was like, if Tyler Toffoli was going to re-sign in New Jersey, wouldn't he have done it already? And that really gave me pause.
I guess.
He's getting moved. He's 100% getting moved.
Probably.
Or if they don't move him, it's because they want to go for the playoff, blah, blah, blah. I get it. Like, that team should make the playoffs. That's the thing. But
they really should have.
Healthy Jack Hughes this year, I think they do. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if they got a save earlier on in the year, and perhaps if the Flames ownership didn't cheap out and actually let Jacob Markstrom go to Jersey.
Yeah.
That was weird. That was weird. That one's so
okay. We got to wrap up this segment, the Pettersson sign segment. I got to tell you.
What segment is this?
Yeah, well, we don't do segments really, but we got to
shout stuff.
Look, this was this. Do you have anything else on Pettersson that you want to say? Because I was talking about how he's guarded. He was a little guarded in the media. I'm excited for them to get back home.
There's a load off, and you hope it translates to his play.
Green for Jack Adams. I've already forgotten how to pronounce his name. What did he say? How did he pronounce it? Karoon. Okay, Karoon.
Where did he say that?
I don't know. He said it somewhere in the chat.
It's Karin. Just telling you.
All right. Travis Green. Yeah, people are loving the Travis Green stuff in the chat.
I was a teacher, as you know, and I always got good credit for pronouncing people's names correctly.
What did you teach?
Socials, mostly PE, sometimes.
PE,
sometimes English.
Nice. English. Did you teach like a high school?
Yeah.
Like in the Lower Mainland?
In Vancouver and Richmond.
Oh.
Didn't you teach journalism at Langara? Am I imagining things?
No, I took journalism at Langara.
Oh, okay.
Did you ever teach at RC Palmer?
Yeah.
All right, I gotta talk to you after the show. Okay. I gotta tell you that this first segment, which was supposed to be about Elias Pettersson only, but somehow we talked about Travis Green. Time to talk about Park Casino. Park is the official casino resort of the Vancouver Canucks, and Sekeres and Price will be live on location doing a show inside BC Kitchen before Vancouver takes on Colorado on March 13th. Come grab a bite, watch Sekeres and Price, and take home some of the on-site prizes. On days the Canucks play, you can receive 15% off the game day menu with your game ticket at the BC Kitchen. Park is just steps away from Rogers Arena, and when you sign up for Encore Rewards, you get $10 free play to use in the Canucks gaming corner. Whether it's a game day or just a night out with friends, let Park be your place to play. I got a few good Park stories. I didn't know how to play blackjack, and I accidentally went to the $25 bet table, and I won. I was up like 125, and I walked away. Can't wait to get back there.
Beginner's luck.
No, my first time in Vegas. Yeah, no, I sat down and I won a couple $100 and I stood up. I got up to 200. I'm like, all right, and I stood up and took it up and I put it in the safe in my room. So I was like, because like that's what my hotel would cost or whatever.
Beautiful,
like, I made
smart man.
Made my money back.
Oh, I love it.
I can only have fun from now on.
That's right. You can have fun by checking out Park Casino. All right, I wanted to talk about this game. Canucks beat the Anaheim Ducks 2-1. A few headlines from this story. Nils Höglander, obviously with a big game opening the scoring. Quinn Hughes really dominating after a pretty, not great performance. I think in the Statsies, we called it the worst performance of his season on Thursday. It was a really tough game for Quinn Hughes on Thursday, and he was very good last night. He's obviously the driving force on that goal, and credit to Nils Höglander as well, who ultimately scores the goal and did good work on the play before
Always
the goal actually went in. Exactly. I love me some Nils Höglander. But Quinn Hughes had a really good game. I want to talk about Nils Höglander a little bit. I got to talk about the goalies as well, but Nils Höglander is the one I want to focus on. Look, I list everything to you. This is welcome to Canucks Conversation.
No, the goalies,
this is how we
I'm
do
just
it.
laughing with Quaz wants to talk goalies. I'm shocked.
Yeah, that's right. Nils Höglander, 19 even strength goals on the year.
Yeah.
A really nice kind of redemption arc story. One Travis Green's looking for in New Jersey. A really nice story for Nils Höglander, a guy who couldn't get the trust of Travis Green. Well, more than his other coaches, but couldn't get the trust of Bruce Boudreau, couldn't get the trust of Rick Tocchet, and now playing in the top six, flourishing.
Well, no, he never had Rick Tocchet, so he got the trust of Rick Tocchet, and now he's getting games.
Well, at the start of the year, he didn't have the trust of Rick. Trust me, I had people texting me every day reminding me that he didn't have the trust of Rick Tocchet when I was on the Höglander train early on in the year. Okay. But anyways, 19 even strength goals on the season. He was getting power play time. I don't know if you noticed this, and I get it stylistically, but Vasily Podkolzin getting power play time and Nils Höglander getting bumped off the second power play unit last night.
I'm just curious about the timing of Vasily Podkolzin getting called up.
Well, we're going to talk about that in our trade deadline primer, which is coming up later in the show. I like Podkolzin's game as well, but Höglander, I wanted to focus on him and ask you the question of 19 even strength goals. What more does Nils Höglander have to give this season?
What more does he have to
Yeah,
get?
like what more can this guy
he possibly do?
Yeah.
Well, he can get some power play time. He could score some power play goals. No, he's having a great year. I mean, talk about a player that, first of all, was in the NHL when he should. I mean, he had a good rookie season, but he shouldn't have been in the NHL.
Yeah.
Like, he was in it because the team wasn't spending money.
Louis Eriksson and Jake Virtanen were the guys he was competing with for that top 6 spot. Like, I will never forget that training camp.
Nuts.
Yeah.
And then the coach got fired the next season, and it was just a mess. Like, you look at the consistency in his game now, and it's very in line with the stuff that Taka talks about. And in the end, Taka was right. Like, there's just details, and there's things you need, and there's a sort of a consistent effort level that you yourself know you can get to. And this is the challenge of coaching, is that coaches can take them to the next, like, that is what a coach is for, right? Like, your capacity is not what you think it is. It's a lot more.
Yeah.
And so and I think we've seen that to a degree with Podkolzin. That's part of why they sent him back to Abbotsford this year, was just to get him, because I've said this many places, but you think about it, it'd been 5 years since he got to be the man. Like, he got drafted, and then he sits for 2 years at the end of the bench in St. Petersburg, like, where in a horrendous kind of situation, because it's like, when you do play, it's entirely not to make a mistake, right? And you make a mistake, and you're not even going to play.
Yeah.
And you don't get to be the man. Then you come here. He's had 3 coaches in the NHL. Sort of being told, oh, play safe, third, fourth line, blah, blah, blah. And so I think he completely lost his way. And Höglander, in a much shorter version of that, is that story. And you go back to his draft year, guy that everyone said, had this motor. He never stopped moving. He had great hands around the net. He just had to figure out, sort of build some strength and translate that game into the professional, like the NHL professional level. And maybe he'd be a great player, and he's turned out to be exactly the player they'd hoped he'd be. And Podkolzin's the same kind of course. And I think Höglander, like, in the end, realistically, is he a second line winger? I'm not sure. He's fine. He's a guy you probably like to try to upgrade over, so then you can bump down the roster. You can have some depth scoring. But yeah, he's having a good year. I mean, to go back to your original question, what else can he do? Solidify himself as a second line winger and be the player in the role that he is, and just be, like, completely immovable, that he's a guy on that line and he's going to be there forever.
Signed for another season beyond this one too, and that is some value. That would be very good value for the Canucks, if this guy could be a legitimate top 6 player for next season as well. Okay, one aspect of that game that I really want to focus on, we'll get to Podkolzin because it segues us perfectly into our trade deadline primer. Casey DeSmith's first win since January 9th. More recently, he backstopped, I mean, if you can even call it that, the Canucks in that 10-7 loss, that embarrassing loss against the Minnesota Wild. And again, I'm making a joke. I'm not pinning that loss on Casey DeSmith. Obviously, a lot of 5-on-3s in that game, 4 of them. Casey DeSmith really good last night. Really liked what I saw from him. I don't know if the Canucks performance as a whole was as good as what Twitter suggested it was.
It was fine.
It was fine, but it was also the Anaheim Ducks they were playing.
To quote Travis Green, it was okay.
Yeah, it was okay, but I don't know.
Which
I saw
means
some
average.
people.
For those who forget, means average. Just okay means not good.
Yeah.
And good means good.
I just saw too many people being like, yeah,
pretty good you never get.
They're back on track. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if they're back on track after that one. We'll see what they do tomorrow in LA. But I like Casey DeSmith's start. Gets the win, and ultimately why this matters so much and why I'm bringing it up is that it builds confidence for the coaching staff to play him over these final 19 games. Thatcher Demko's at 46 games on the season.
Yeah.
I asked Rick talking about this 2 practices ago, maybe. I don't know when I asked him. It was sometime last week.
This, that I remember, I'm not throwing you under the bus here. You asked him. It's been people yelled at me. They're like, why are you? And I'm like, because he's been asked that like almost every day. Like, why are you playing Demko so much?
Yeah.
And you're right. 19 games ago? Is that what?
19 games left.
So, 46 games. Are you gonna give him 14 starts? Like, you wanted to keep him under 60. I asked Ian Clark this years, at some point. I think it was last year.
Yeah.
Is 60 a limit? He goes, every goal is different. He didn't want to say one thing or another, but you knew in the back of his mind.
It's asinine to play goalie that much?
Well, I think it's just realistic. You have to be realistic in terms of the demand of the position. And of course, I think you have to think about when those games happen too, right? Because as the season goes along, it's harder and harder on your body because you're doing rest and recovery is hard. The one thing the Canucks do have in their favor over these remaining 19 games is a lot of home games and was it 2 back-to-backs left?
Oh, I have.
And a lot of off days too.
A lot of off days, right? So there's a lot of rest. And like Talkett's kind of brought it up himself. Like he mentioned the other day when they brought their
Roman Bazaran
in, like the
third goalie,
the practice goalie. Like that, we're gonna see that a lot because it's about like giving your goalie a physical break from everything he's doing because it's so hard to recover. And they're in such like caloric deficit by this point in the season that like it's so hard for them to catch up. And so a lot of games now is even worse than a lot of games at the beginning of the year.
Yes. So what I was getting at is I asked Talkett about this, and he said that him and Ian Clark have kind of discussed a range.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've tried to do is figure out what that range is. I'm going to guess it's 55 to 60. I don't think they want him over 60. I think if it's a range, it's 55. So you would need to start DeSmith at least 5 of these games. And like you said, there's a lot of rest, so there's going to be some temptation, I'm sure. But you've got to start DeSmith at least 5 of these games. And I would argue that you got to get it closer to 55 than you do 60. So I think you should go back to kind of what we saw toward the start of the year where it was more of a split. I don't want a 50-50 split, but maybe like, I don't know, a 60-40 split, a 65-35 split.
I think we're going to see a lot of Casey DeSmith.
You should see a lot of Casey DeSmith, is what I'm saying. Because if you're going to add on at least 16 more wins in the playoffs, you're going to need Thatcher Demko healthy. And you think about what his total is going to get to, if during all those playoff games, like if you have 2 games, your first 2 series, you play 2 series and they both go to 7 games. And you get to the 3rd round, you're halfway there. You're halfway to where you actually want to end up. Okay. And they both go 7 games. You've added 14 games to Thatcher Demko's workload. Exactly. So if you start him 60, now he started 74 games. Yep. Now we're getting into what goalies haven't done for the past, I don't know, like 5-10 years.
Yeah.
That's where that's where the conversation is starting to go. So if your
Let's
best
see them win
case scenario,
around first, Dave.
Sure, I'm just saying.
This guy thinks Demko's the next Vasilevsky here.
Plan for the best.
Games.
Plan for the best is what I'm saying. And if your best case scenario is getting to the Stanley Cup final, which it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get it. You don't want him playing now.
Yeah, you don't want him playing now.
Yeah, 100%.
Think if all 4 of those games go to 7 games. Grady, what's 7 times 4?
28.
28. I didn't know
it out of my mouth.
That's what my.
You're the editor of Canucks Army.
Yeah, not Math Army.
I just wanted to note on to Smith. I know his save percentage, and that's been deflated by the Minnesota game. But even the recent games outside of that, he was still picking up points. Yeah. Right. And if you look at his total body of work this year, 13 of 17 starts, he gets at least a point. 21 points out of a possible 34. For a backup goalie, you can't ask for much more than that, right? Sure, you'd want the save percentage to be a little higher, but, what do we always say about backup goalies quads? You got to give your team a chance to win. Yeah. And I think pretty much, almost every night he's done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be interesting to see now where they go with him next year because he's a UFA. The Seeloffs hasn't been great in the AHL this year.
Game-losing stinker.
Nikita Tolopilo.
Well, that's the thing. Or do they look like a...
Oh, I thought you said he let the goal in. I was like, no, that was Seeloffs. No, trust me. We know all about Tolopilo on this show.
Here.
So do they go with a veteran next year? Do they maybe bring DeSmith back? Be interesting to know. I know a backup goalie's lower down the pecking order of things you got to get done in the off season, but it's a very underrated component of team building.
I'm just looking ahead here. You look at the schedule the way it shakes out, right? 3 tough games this week. So are you going to try to get DeSmith in any of those? I don't know. You've got days off next week. You've got Washington on Saturday. Like, do you
the 16th?
The 16th, Saturday the 16th. Like, do you think so poorly of Washington that you're gonna start Casey DeSmith against them? You've got games against Buffalo and Montreal. You got a game against Calgary at home. You've got games, then tough games. There's a lot of another Anaheim. I think there's a couple of Arizona games here. Like, there's a lot of games where you can literally map it out and say, yes, that is going to be a Casey DeSmith start.
Can you find 5 of them?
At least. I've just found 5 right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, just looking through the end of March.
I'm going to say something. If this were the start of the season and we were still seeing the Canucks be really disciplined in their plan with Thatcher Demko, we would see Casey DeSmith on Thursday against the Vegas Golden Knights.
I agree.
Full stop.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we were seeing at the start of the year. Grady, you had something.
Well, just Now they'll probably go Demko against Kings, Vegas, Winnipeg.
Yeah, for
Colorado.
sure. Yeah.
If they do give DeSmith Saturday against Washington, now you're looking at Wednesday to the following Tuesday as games for Demko. So 6 days of rest. And I think that's a key component in all these trying to map out schedules. How much rest day in between rest and recovery?
Yeah.
You don't want him playing 3 out of 4 or something like that.
I mean, he's playing, you look at that last game of the season on the 18th of April in Winnipeg. DeSmith is 100% going to play in that game, right? It's the last game of the year. You're just going to give your goalie a break. Unless there's some crazy scenario they're facing.
Trophy.
Well,
they're
playoff seeding.
Yeah, but I mean, it's almost certainly let's put it this way. Casey DeSmith's name is written in pencil right now. And ideally they'd like to put it in pen.
We're also penciling in that as our next watch party date. So stay tuned for that, folks. That'll be our next date. You gotta come this time.
Well,
here's a good question.
Well, you obviously were listening to Sekeres and Price because we had a long conversation about this, which was that I had my Strata AGM.
Oh.
And I'm on the Strata.
Oh, that's
and
right.
you're now what?
I'm now the president.
Oh.
Of your Strata?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Wow. How much does that pay?
Nothing.
Exposure.
Resume
builder.
The Strata.
Could you pick a game that's not on a Thursday? Because I usually have to write about the game on a Thursday.
Yeah. Maybe we'll invite Kuz instead.
There you go.
Kuz will come to the event.
2 games against the Coyotes. We'll probably
there you go. Yeah, I saw
Anaheim. There's 2 games.
Yeah.
Anaheim, 2 games against Coyotes.
Buffalo,
Montreal.
We just talked about that.
I think we're going to see a lot of them.
Yeah. Okay, we talked a lot about DeSmith, the Ducks. Canucks beat the Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to this ad read. Well, I forgot about
nice segue. Way to slip it
in there.
I know.
Yeah, so nice.
Love your sponsors.
And I don't know how I could forget about that because it's one of my favorite sponsors. 4 Winds Brewing. Family owned and operated in Delta, home to the 4 Winds Light Lager, a crisp, clean, and easy drinking beer. A beer for everyone. A perfect beer for before, after, or during the game. Ask for 4 Winds Light Lager at your local liquor store or have some delivered right to your door through the online shop at 4windsbrewing.ca. Look at that new graphic. That's beautiful. Okay, let's get to our trade deadline primer, which is brought to you by the Wendy's Daily Faceoff Survivor Pool game. Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy teams this year in the Daily Faceoff Survivor Pool game. For those of you who smoke the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you winning. Download the Wendy's app and score yourself 150 bonus reward points on your first order and grab a sweet victory from the mouth-watering jaws of defeat along with some fresh, never-frozen beef. Sign up to play Daily Faceoff Survivor Pool Fantasy to win weekly prizes like the spicy chicken sandwich from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. Okay, trade deadline primer. How do you think Vasily Podkolzin played in Anaheim?
I think he played pretty good. I mean, that was the player that they want him to be.
Page and Kyle Dubas?
Maybe. I don't know.
Oh, I look at it and say absolutely. Great, pull this up. This tweet from LeBrun. We also saw our pal Rick Dollywall report on this today that the Canucks have serious interest, was the word that Dollywall used, in Jake Gensel.
Sure.
LeBrun tweets this out. The sense is the Penguins after that road trip have a very, very clear sense of what needs to be done before Friday's deadline. For those that don't know, the Penguins pooped the bed on that road trip. It was you could make an argument that it was as bad as the New Jersey road trip, but
I think
New Jersey's was worse.
In a weird way, Pittsburgh needed this because they needed to
they should have never made the Erik Karlsson trade. That was dumb when it was made.
I think it was let's listen. It was a bit like this when, not to really defend Benny and Linden when they came in, but they come in, they've got the Sedins. What are they going to do? They're going to try to make this team, a sort of last squeeze of the lemon, if you will. And that's what the Karlsson trade was about. They're like, hey, maybe we can make this work, but it hasn't. In the end, the teams, the power, and who would expect the power play with all those guys on it would not be good, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sorry to cut you off. I thought it was weird because we kind of saw in San Jose that they already tried to do the Karlsson Burns experiment, and that didn't work.
That's
right?
a good
And
point.
Pittsburgh had Letang already playing PP1 anchoring that, and it's like there's only so much puck to go around.
Yeah.
But I would say, as a counterpoint, look at your Vancouver Canucks, who have managed to make it work with Philip Hronek and Quinn Hughes. So, but in the end, Pittsburgh, they said, let's give it a go. We can make it a go. It's not worked. So what now? What do you do?
Yeah.
So now what do you do? So they have this bad losing streak. It is clear. It is time to move along. and start moving stuff out.
Trade Crosby to Vancouver.
Yeah, that I mean, as I said before, could you imagine? I mean,
I would.
Listen, if Sidney Crosby is available in a trade, you like jump over the desk immediately to make it happen.
Do you know what's crazy though?
He loves Tocchet, by the way.
Like I can't imagine.
They all
it.
love Tocchet. They all love Crosby.
Crosby loves Jim Rutherford.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember when Jim Rutherford stepped away from the Penguins? The quotes Crosby was giving was he was like I'm pretty sure he said he was sad. Like I'm shocked and saddened that Rutherford stepped away.
Yeah. No, Sid. They love Sid. Like
Phil Kessel's about to be a Canuck. Like, come on. I can believe it. That's the thing. You asked me if I can believe it. I can believe it. I could imagine, and I can believe it that the Canucks would be in on.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the Canucks, having poked around again, figuring things out, and trying to bring something to the table to today's conversation. And it's everything we've heard. But like for the longest time, I'm like, I looked at what they had. They're like, they need a defenseman now they've been playing, and they're like, their focus has arrived that they would love to find a top six forward. I do think Gensel's too hard. I talked to a few people around the league. People seem to think he's going to end up like Detroit, Edmonton, Colorado. I mean, the thing with Guentzel is the contract is big, and you have to figure out a way to make it work under the cap. And the Canucks have challenges, obviously. And when you're in Pittsburgh's position and you have so little in the stable, like you are going to make the trade that gets you the most. And
we saw the report that Pittsburgh is looking for prospects, not picks, which I found interesting because I was starting to think, okay, like, so what would if you're the Canucks, what are you offering that gets Guentzel done? Well, does it have to be Karamaki?
What are you saying yes to?
Exactly.
So like, for instance, one of the things that came up in TANF discussions I heard was that, obviously DPD came up. Mm-hmm. And the Canucks really like him. They really like Willander, and they really like Karamaki. Those have been kind of the three guys that they just do not. It's very clear they do not want to move. But does the quality of player that's available? I mean, you has to think that it changes.
I'll tell you what, Aatu Ratu's getting hot at the right time. Like he's tearing up the AHL right now.
Great. But like
they have no other centers in their organization, really, other than Sasson.
I like Sasson, but like come on.
Good name.
But so they're in this position, like Guentzel clearly far and away is the number one guy out there. A guy like Buchnevich is going to get a lot of interest as well. Like look at Vegas, and like that's the other thing. Look at Vegas and the position they're in, trying to pick people up, right? They're in a very strong position realistically. So the Canucks are in the mix, going to be in the mix for a lot of these guys. They want to find a top six winger, but a lot of these guys are going to be going to, there's a lot of teams that are in better positions to make trades than the Canucks are. The Canucks are fine edge. So that's why you start going down the list and you start thinking about guys like Riley Smith or Anthony Duclair or players
Tyler
like that.
Toffoli.
Tyler Toffoli. I mean, I think Tyler Toffoli, I was saying to you the other day, I would laugh hysterically if that is where they ended up.
On the same contract that he should have signed in Vancouver. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this because I was trying to think of how, with a Jake Guentzel, and obviously the money's not perfect, but with like a Jake Guentzel or Tyler Toffoli, how are the Canucks going to fit that in? I'm starting to get into the territory, and one guy we didn't talk about in the Anaheim Canucks recap there was Ilya Mikheyev, who continues to just be absolutely awful.
Yeah. And he's the guy that's going to come out of the lineup. Like once, if they get back to full health, like when Josh gets back, like next week or whatever it is, like, and there's no other.
If they go and get like Brandon Duhaime, even if they don't make a trade,
you're right.
He's coming out of the lineup.
And it's really too bad. Like he played pretty well last year on one knee, and it's surprising. I mean, for ACL injuries are hard to come back from. They take a long time, right? And so we're in that 1 year window now, but I'm surprised at sort of how it's like he's slowed down. And so anyway, he's a mess. It's a mess. And I don't know how you get out. I don't know how you convince someone. He clearly, like, the reason why he's in the lineup is because he's not like hurting you defensively, but he's literally not doing anything.
He's Louis Eriksson. He's Louis Eriksson.
He's become Louis Eriksson.
And this is what I'm kind of getting at. And I made the Louis Eriksson comparison in yesterday's instant reaction was that at least Louis hustled. And right now we're just not seeing much hustle and like, peeling away from body.
No, I think there's a lot of try.
Peeling away from a lot of puck battles and body contact.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Come on.
I think, but
offense goes to die when the puck gets on.
Yeah,
the
but even away from that, like and JPat pointed out on Twitter too, there was like 2 instances where he could have finished his check and pulls away. you're leaving the lineup. You're out of the lineup. I'm sorry. It's
no, I'm not defending him.
And I mean, you said it too. Like, he's out of the lineup when they're fully healthy. So the thing that I'm wondering, Patrick, is, and I saw Drance talking about this too, is that there's got to be belief around the league a little bit that, okay, he might be able to come back, because there's understanding of how ACL injuries work. And you just pointed out, you're in that kind of year where there's recovery. There's a chance that he kind of finds that spark again, finds that speed that made him effective. And I'm just wondering if you can make a trade, let's use Toffoli as the example, okay, where Mikheyev goes back to make the money work, but you're still throwing in like a solid prospect and a second or third round pick for Toffoli.
Yeah. Or, I mean, there's sort of a understanding of, like, you're going to have to do some, like, the Penguins probably recognize you're going to have to do some retention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a hard time imagining it, but I sat back and thought about it. Like, who brought Ilya Mikheyev to the NHL? It's Kyle Dubas.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing that happening. But, if somehow there's a price involved that's retaining Mikheyev, and that's the price against, retaining, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's funny and complicated. I don't think that happened. That's just me talking out loud, by the way. That's not
Dubas, a report, an official report.
Absolutely not a report.
Dubas also knows his injury history before the knee injury. Like, this guy could never stay healthy.
That's the other thing.
And the same thing has plagued him his whole career, is that he just doesn't have the hands to finish. Yeah. And you move him, elevate him up into a top six. Like when he played with John Tavares, same thing with Pettersson now. Like, he just couldn't sustain that production that you think you need to. And, if you're an acquiring team, are you really, of course, retention would be involved, but, this guy is trying to get round back into form. Same kind of things have plagued him his whole career. Are you really going to pay that much money for a guy that's just defensively responsible and giving you nothing offensively? Quickly, before we transition here, what about Chad Ruhwedel? I tweeted over the weekend. Here's a guy that is battle tested in the playoffs. Rutherford and Alvin would know him. Right shot, depth guy. You're not going to have to pay a lot, but you can never have too many defensemen come.
Yeah,
they love that Pittsburgh well, right?
Yeah, I mentioned him I wrote a story like last week. I just mentioned him on the side. Is that the kind of guy? Because in the end, the defenseman Rutherford's always gone for. He's gone for someone who can play. I think the Canucks. You look at the Canucks; they actually, I think, are pretty happy with the edge they have. Is there a guy that can move the puck a little bit better than what they have? Is that a kind of defenseman you can find? Ruhwedel's not that guy, but Ruhwedel is a guy would be an upgrade on Mark Friedman. And so if you're just looking at an upgrade on Mark Friedman, if you're looking to change the mix entirely, I mean, I don't think they're looking to change the mix all that much. They're pretty, like I said, pretty happy with that. Like, Susie comes back, he's been their best defensive defenseman.
Matt Irwin sent down today. Looks like Susie's going to play on Tuesday.
I feel bad for Matt Irwin. Good dude.
Oh, Matt Irwin's the best.
He's had 2 call-ups, and he's been here he's been in the NHL for a grand total of 48 hours. But that tells you, I mean, they signed him as a depth guy. I'm mildly surprised he hasn't gone a longer look, but the fact Friedman shoots right, I guess, is the overall.
I like Matt Irwin a lot.
Yeah.
And he played games with the Caps last
year.
He played
60 games, right?
61.
Yeah. But, you hit your 30s, this is how it goes. I mean, look, I hate to mention it, but you look at Ian Cole, right? Like, Ian Cole's had some struggles lately because I think he's feeling his age. 35. But yeah, anyway, I found myself thinking about just sort of where they're at, what they're looking for, and the top 6 winger thing. I mentioned that earlier, and looking for a defenseman who can move the puck a little bit more than they have right now. But I think that's probably dreaming, and they don't have a ton of space. The thing I do find myself wondering, could they find a way to get off Tucker Pullman?
Oh yeah,
right. Like if you're thinking long term, but I don't. Was it Bill Armstrong said, "Oh, we're not. We're not." He defiantly declared we're not the dumping ground, but it's also, you read it and like, well, you don't have any money.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about? Are you willing to take picks and prospects? Oh, great. Like, you got Matt Dumba. Okay. I mean, Matt Dumba is an interesting player.
Yeah.
I think he'd be an interesting player here. I'm not sure how he fits in the lineup at this point, but.
Is there any world that the Canucks go full Vegas and Tampa and say, "Hey, Tyler Myers, just take your time on this one. We're going to put
given
you
everything
LTIR."
they said, given everything that's said, I don't think it happens. I think they're in that window now where it's like, okay, how do we manage? Assuming they sign Kessel, I don't think they'll expose him to waivers, but if you sign him before Friday, you could expose him to waivers, and he's on your NHL list. So that's all you need. You just need him on your list, but you also have to protect against him getting claimed.
When does he play in Abbey? I don't know their schedule.
Well,
I don't think he's going to play in
Abby's still on the road.
Because you would have to sign an ATO.
Abby's still on the road. Yeah. So Abby, if he was going to have played any Abbotsford games at home, it would have been last week. Okay. But they're on the road this week. They don't come back till next week, right? They have home games next week. So you could give him a conditioning stint down there. But it certainly sounds like if they sign him, it's like he'll be on the NHL roster and then they'll loan him because that way they don't have to burn a recall.
Yeah,
exactly. But then you're dealing with cap stuff.
Yeah.
So there's sort of cap machinations. If it happens, if he gets signed, I assume he will get signed. Like his contract will get registered right before the deadline because
exactly.
They've already done a couple other things and they can make it all work that way.
Okay, we're gonna get to anyone else, but before we do that, I want to close with a question for you. It's about Puck Colson.
You've already asked me.
I know. I'm gonna ask you again.
I didn't know there were gonna be Puck Colson questions.
There's another one. This is a. I want your put everything we've said about Puck Colson so far. Put it all together here. Yeah. Okay. From a 10th overall pick. Okay.
Yeah.
You, like you said, hasn't gotten regular deployment at any point really throughout his career to this point. Hell, even in Vancouver, it's top 6, it's bottom 6. There's been no regularity. This season, he gets some regularity in Abbotsford.
Yeah.
He looked great in Abbotsford. Maybe didn't put up a ton of points, but he's been looking really solid down in Abbotsford. Came up yesterday. Again, 0s on the stat line, but I thought he played pretty well.
Yeah, sure.
Going to be a few more games ahead of the deadline for opposing general managers and opposing teams to see him. 2 games left. I ask you this, Patrick. Is Vasily Podkolzin a member of the Vancouver Canucks organization after Friday?
Put me on the spot there.
I know.
I think I have to say no because that's why I'm hesitating.
You're saying no?
I think I have to go with that and say no.
And why are you saying no?
Because I think he's going to end up being a trade chip. I think they're going to show that he's game's coming back and that someone's going to want to. Yeah, that's a player I like.
I look at it and say this management regime, from everything we've heard, does not want to move on from Lekarmaki. They do not want to move on from Willander.
That's exactly it.
They don't want to move on from DPD, Elias Pettersson 2.0. What do all those guys have in common, Patrick? They were all drafted by this management regime.
And that's a not uncommon story.
And I'm not trying to say that this management regime doesn't like Vasily Podkolzin. I'm just saying that they understand how business works in the NHL, and they understand that if they want to get any business done and they want to go out and make a trade, they're going to have to give up something that they like. What do they like the least out of this pile of prospects? Maybe it's Vasily Podkolzin.
And they were being very quiet about him. I think I asked Rutherford about him, I don't know, a month ago, and he was like, "Yeah, well, could be a playoff guy." I mean, so that's why I was like, as soon as they called him up, I'm like, I mean, it can't help but miss the timing. But I was like, I think the timing does matter on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to say no as well. I think Vasily Podkolzin is on the move. I think he could be on the move ahead of Friday's deadline. Okay, final thing on the trade deadline primer, the ticker. What do you think the Canucks do before Friday? I'm giving you a chance to make one bet. This is the one thing the Canucks are going to do. I'm going to say, I'll go first. Okay. I'm going to say they do not trade for defense help.
Right.
They don't trade for any defense help. Sure. I don't think they get any depth defensemen.
Sure.
I don't think they make any upgrades on defense. That's what I'm going to say. I don't think they make anything, any trades on defense. I think they go out and get one top 6 forward and one bottom 6 forward.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that happens.
You're supposed to disagree with me.
Well, the problem is, Dave, is that I already said those things.
Maybe the problem is that I have great ideas. And I mean, you think about, in all seriousness, you think about the fact that they are adding Kessel as well. Like, in all indications are that this team's going to add Phil Kessel. You're adding to your depth in a different way.
So the Kessel thing is interesting because if he can play, and there's obviously if they're signing him, they think he can play.
Yeah.
He's going to be on the 4th line, not play a ton. He's there to help your power play because your power play has lost its way. And so is he your depth guy? Or is it him like Duhaime and then like Riley Smith or something like that?
Anything's better than what's on the 4th line right now.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that's happened.
I know.
I mean, it was such a bright start. I mean, I never thought Phil DiGiuseppe was
going to, man.
But it was such a bright start for DiGiuseppe, and then he has 3 goals.
Yeah,
like how do you roster that guy?
Yeah, exactly.
He had his first shot on goal in 5 games last night, and I know he's a grinder.
He's worked hard. Good dude. Good story.
Great dude.
But
that's where I might disagree with you guys because I think Podkolzin already is an upgrade on.
See, that was
And I think Tocchet really likes this tool set that Pods has to offer.
He does.
However, you can also get kind of that player out on the market on the deadline. So
that's why I hesitated, because I was like, everything he does when he's on and he's the player that I think people still believe he could be or should be is exactly what Tocchet wants. So that's kind of why I was.
And he's cheap.
And he's still relatively cheap. Yeah, and you're going to get him back for a pretty cheap deal again. Like, he's not. They need cost control guys, and a guy like that on a cost control deal, especially if you're trying to now figure out how you're going to manage your way through your OEL buyout for the next 3 years. That's the kind of guy that, do you move him now or do you move him, a year from now or whatever? So, yeah. But I also think he probably has a lot of value, especially if you're trying to navigate your way through a world of stinky contracts and things like that.
Stinky contracts, the Ilya Mikheyev story. All right. That was it for our trade deadline primer. And look, you're here all week. You're here on deadline day.
Well, every other day.
Yeah.
I can't replace Harm.
We're gonna have a lot of time to continue talking about the trade deadline. But late show, sorry folks. It's time for Anyone Else, brought to you by DoorDash. You're supposed to say ding dong when I say
ding
DoorDash.
Dong.
There you go. It's our listeners' chance to get involved and hit us up in the YouTube live chat. And it's also our listeners' chance to get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when they download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. That's all capital letters, NATION, and the numbers 25. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms do apply. Okay, let's get to it. What do we have in the chat here? Let me know if there's anything on Facebook.
First of all, Karn changed his name to Conversation, which is fabulous.
Yes, I saw that.
Canucks
Conversation. It's great. It's wonderful. Brian Choi, thoughts on just waiving Ilya Mikheyev to Abbotsford? It would save the team more than $1 million in cap space. Don't remember the exact number. Would do a lot for cap flexibility.
Yeah, $1 million. Yeah,
it was 1.25.
It's not bad. Yeah, it's certainly possible.
Out of further piss off Dan Milstein.
Yeah.
Tell your clients to play better.
They're gonna try to trade that contract.
Oh yeah, he is. I'm just saying, like, an agent
passed last night. By the way, did we talk about that? Because man, that was beautiful.
Oh, Zadorov Garland? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I really like the finish from Garland too. He's like,
especially the right shot,
nice.
Like cutting. That's a hard kind of redirection through the slot like that.
Yeah.
I loved Garland's lack of a celly too. It was just like
I scored.
We've been here before.
Zadorov, I do that now. Him.
I do that now. Okay, hell of a shot. Do you guys think the Canucks should flip Elias Lindholm?
I'm
gonna say no.
No,
I think you still give him time to figure it out. And Patrick Allvin was asked about that. Well, not asked about that specifically on Saturday, but he was asked about Elias Lindholm, and kind of talked about Rick Tocchet was asked about it, and he spoke about how that's why we got him here early, so that he can maybe kind of figure things out a little bit. You really wanted him to find a home on Elias Pettersson's line. Why do you think that hasn't worked?
Well, I mean, the thing that surprised me about it, this is answering it in a different way, was Lindholm was a guy who worked really well with Tkachuk and Gaudreau.
Yes.
Right? And you clearly can see he's not a guy who needs the puck on his stick, right? Like, every line has a guy who needs the puck on his stick. Pettersson needs the puck on his stick. So I was surprised that didn't work. All right. It seems to not have worked yet. It may yet work. I am intrigued by the idea of him being the third line center between Garland and Joshua. I think it's just familiarity, honestly. I think it'll come. The sort of mid-season pickup is always challenging. Think about Zadorov. Like, Zadorov had a real, he started kind of with a flash, and then he had that real low. And he's only just kind of coming back to where we thought he was going to be. And I think Lindholm's just kind of in that window. He's trying to figure out who his teammates are. He's trying to understand what's going on, level expectation, all these things, like what they're trying to do. It is a reasonably complex, it's so funny. Players are like, there's not much difference between systems. I'm like, clearly there are, because you guys always talk about it. Coming in, that there's just a lot to pick up and what they're trying to do. He's been fine. You want more, obviously. You want to see a little more. He's not like a creative player, but he's a player who does all smart stuff off the puck.
I think these next 4 games here is kind of the point where we go, okay, they have something here, or maybe they didn't acquire the player they thought, because this is as pretty much close to as playoff battle tested games as you're going to get. I'm
going to say there's more time than that.
Teams. Well,
I want to see him with, like you just said, with Dakota Joshua. I'm curious how that line looks.
Yeah. Can I say a shout out to my guy Trevor? Hell of a shot. I totally agree. Toffoli is a way better way easier to make things happen than Gensel.
Absolutely.
And there's track history there, right? Track record.
Yeah, exactly.
They've already shown chemistry.
Captain Canuck threw this out. Gensel or Toffoli, he didn't say Toffoli, but take this how you will. To replace Lafferty, and then Kessel replaces Ilya Mikheyev in the Canucks lineup.
Yeah, there'll be something like that. There's a lot of plug and play right now, like where you can see the upgrades. You can see like the thing. If you think about it, you put Kessel in the lineup. Who do your penalty killers become, right? Because you're probably taking a penalty killer out. And Rick knows he shouldn't play JT so much, but they like to play JT. So, there is that sort of thing to consider in terms of how they set up their penalty killers. But if you got Lindholm rolling, if he can figure it out, Mikheyev, Joshua comes back, like you replace Mikheyev, like I don't know, it's a bit to figure. Jeremy Lee, I like this. Who are your untouchable players in the current roster for next season? Like
guys that are still to be signed, or
I just think who are the guys that you have. There's some obvious ones, like there's Pettersson.
Okay, yeah, we'll go past the obvious ones.
Demko, Miller,
Brock Besser.
Is Brock Besser untouchable?
That's a great question, because there is the argument that you would want to sell high on Brock Besser right now when he's scoring 35 plus goals or whatever, right?
Well, if they bring in a guy like Gensel and they re-sign him, then you're gonna have to move out a
absolutely.
And I think that is exactly where it starts becoming that. So you start thinking, okay, how do we, you can have both right now, but you can't have both long term.
Yeah, I'm gonna say your untouchables are Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson and Thatcher Demko. And if anything else,
Miller. You're trading Miller this summer? How are you trading Miller this summer?
No, you're not, because he has trade protection. Yeah, sure, okay, fine.
It's not happening, but and you're not trading him.
I'm just saying
those two are now the conversation is those two do have to learn to live with each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's a full no move. He has a full no move. So it's not like
that it's just to be clear, not that there's huge problems. But
Taj is already tweeting it.
PJ says, no, it's just like they're different guys, and they're going to be together for a long time.
Yeah.
And a lot of, there's lots of examples of teams like that where, but it's not as cliquey. It's just learning to love each other in a new way.
Captain Canuck with a two-parter here. Bluger out of the UFAs is the one you keep. And then he also said, PJ, can you explain why Miller and Pettersson hate each other?
They don't. Shut up.
Explain to the group. Okay.
They don't hate each other.
Do you really think Bluger is the guy that you try to bring back?
Out of the UFAs? There's so many UFAs. They're going to bring back more than one.
There is, but you have Suter signed. You have Amon cheap. You can always go find another
Bluger's
center.
better than Amon.
Sure, he is, but he's also has not I don't think he's scored in this calendar year.
No,
I'm keeping him.
But hold up.
At what price though? It's all about what he's going to cost.
He listen, I still smile a little bit thinking about Patrick Alfine telling us that Bluger could score 15 goals. I think there at one point looked like he might actually score 15 goals, but he's not going to score 15 goals. Bluger still can do more offensively than Nils Åman could ever do.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing you're thinking about.
Dakota Joshua is another name.
I mean, Dakota Joshua, you should. I don't know how you don't keep him.
You have to try to resign.
Like because he really has progressed beyond what he was. Right? He's not. This isn't like some fourth liner that you become overly infatuated with. Yeah. Like he is a guy that has proved himself to be a third line winger, and if you really, maybe he can become a second line power forward. Like that's that's where you start thinking, okay, what do we pay this guy? You're not going to sign him like huge long term deal. But you sign him for a couple of years, and you're going to figure out what the price is and see what that is. So
Wednesday, we're going to talk about Filip Hronek. We're going to save it for Wednesday, though. We're going to save it for Wednesday. That's our little teaser.
Oh, yeah. I got some good stuff.
Quads and PJ back in the saddle on Wednesday. Harman will join me tomorrow. It'll be a remote episode as we preview tomorrow's game against the LA Kings. But Patrick, this was fun. Thank you so much for joining me. And we will see you back in that seat. We'll
test you some more names on Wednesday.
That seat that you're sitting in on Wednesday and Friday. And people who listen to this show know that I switch the chairs every time. And Patrick had a problem with that.
He made me do it. Matt's chair is much nicer, much better aligned.
Yeah. Are we blaming the chairs as to why we didn't start on time?
Yes. Well,
I don't know. I was here on time.
We are blaming Sakaris.
I even stopped to get a coffee as I walked up the street.
Blame Max Sakaris. All right. We'll sign off there. For my co-host, Patrick Johnston, our technical producer, Grady Sass, my name is Dave Gugelli. Thank you so much for listening to the episode of the Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation with Harman and Quads brought to you by the Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X's fresh look is just an added bonus to its range since you can drive up to 406 kilometers on a single charge. That's enough to get you from Kitsilano to Whistler or Kamloops to Kelowna and back and still be home in time for the game. Now that's what we'd call electric. The best part, by choosing electric, you can get up to $11,000 in rebates and incentives. The BZ4X are in stock and selling quickly, so make sure to visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer to get your hands on one. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.